Joe's coming for you. 3, 4 with tingles galore. 5, 6, lots of whispers and clicks. 7, 8 in your relaxed state. 9, 10 he makes you sleep again. Welcome back to another ASMR retro. You may have noticed my glove. I spent some time making this in my tool shop. It's really sharp, so I have to be careful. I don't want to rip my comic. Okay, so today I'm reviewing Freddy's Dead, the comic series. It's a three-issue series based on the final, quote-unquote final, Freddy movie, also called Freddy's Dead. So, I have to admit, this series is a little bit hard to follow. Like, if you haven't seen the movie, you're going to be kind of confused when you're reading this because they don't explain things that they need to explain. So I'll try my best to explain it to you. Okay. Have to be very careful turning the pages. I don't want any accidents. Okay, the story starts off with this guy. They don't tell you his name right off the bat, but he's on this plane. And he's asked for a different seat. But the plane's full. She says the plane's full, so he doesn't really have an option. And he's sitting next to this lady. And she's reading a book that says, "Stay thin with Krueger treatment." So that's a pretty good indication that he's in a dream. And then he says that he hates flying, and the lady says, "Don't be P-word." That was kind of mean. So then he sees this little girl, and she says, "He's gonna make you help him because you're the last." And the guy's like, "What? What are you talking about?" And then suddenly the roof of the plane completely rips off, and the lady goes flying out the top of the plane. He's like, "No." And he says, "It's not fair. I was almost out." So we don't know what he's talking about yet. Blade's crooked. Okay. So you can see now that the guy's seat gets ripped out of the plane, and then he starts falling, and he falls into this house, and then he wakes up, and he's in bed, and he says, "Crap, what a nightmare." And he opens the drapes, and he sees that the whole house is falling. And then he sees Freddy flying on a broom outside the window, dressed up like a witch, and he says, "I'll get you, my pretty, and your little soul too." So it's obviously a reference to Wizard of Oz. And this, I remember the movie, this part was very, well, the whole movie was very cartoony and over the top like that. For better or worse. So, yeah, I see the plane, the house is trapped in some kind of tornado, and Freddy's loving it. And then the guy goes flying out the window for some reason. And then, can you see that? Yeah, you can see that. So then he looks up and he sees a sign that says Elm Street. And he says, Elm Street, it would be. So he starts walking and he hears laughing. And then he trips like a klutz and he falls down this little, not a cliff, but a thingy into like this valley, I guess, whatever, dirt hill. And yeah, he hits his head on the fence. And then he gets up and he's all wheezy. Just kind of wandering. And then he goes up to this little booth and it says accidental tours tickets. And the man in the window says 1 ticket round trip. And you can see there's blood on the window. And then he says, hurry up, Sonny. You don't want to miss the bus. And he's like, well, we're talking about what bus? He turns and he sees this huge bus. Accidental Tour Special. And of course, Freddy is the driver. And then here you get the title of the issue. The Final Nightmare, Part 1. Little John in Slumberland. Is that like Little John the Rapper? Or... oh, my blade is a bit messed up. I have to weld it. Yeah, whatever. That's good enough. So yeah, there's the title. But we still really don't know what's going on. So here it looks like he's getting electrocuted by the bus. And oh yeah, now we know his name is John, I guess, sort of. Well, you'll see what I mean. But he's just getting hit by the bus, not electrocuted. So now he's like pinned to the windshield and he's screaming. And Freddy says, no screaming while the bus is in motion. And then you can see the sign that says, now leaving Springwood. That's the city where all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies take place. Or city or town, whatever. So, you can see the bus is going up to 110 miles per hour. And then Freddy, being the nice guy that he is, decides to slam on the brakes. And he laughs. So of course, obeying the laws of physics, John goes flying. And this is kind of weird. So, you know, like on cartoons, when somebody gets like thrown against the wall or runs, through a wall, and it makes a perfect outline of their body. Well, this is kind of what happens. He goes through, I guess, some barrier kind of thing. And that's sort of the physical barrier between Springwood and the outside world, I guess. And he lands on this rock. His head lands on this rock. And then you see that physical barrier, the hole closing up. And Freddy says, now be a good doggy and fetch for Freddy. So basically, it's a little confusing, but basically, Freddy can't leave Springwood in people's dreams or whatever. So, I guess that barrier is preventing him from leaving. So, he's gonna get this guy, who we're calling John, somehow to, well, you'll see eventually, but he's trying to find a way to get out of Springwood because all the kids, he already killed all the young people, kids, teenagers, whatever, in Springwood. Yeah, it's kind of a spoiler for later on, but it's kind of confusing the way they present it in this comic. I don't want you to be lost. So anyway, the guy gets up, and he's like, where am? And then he looks in his pocket, and he sees stay awake pills and some other stuff. Now another thing I have to explain, which is that when he hit his head on the rock, he lost his memory. And the other thing is he has a news article in his pocket, and we'll see more about that later. Wow, this paper is really strong. It's not cutting. So anyway, now we go to this another scene here, and this lady is sleeping in her bed, and she's having a dream, and she sees this water tower, and this little girl, and she's laughing and playing and stuff. And she says, "Can't catch me, but I got you." She's laughing, and then she hears a scream. So then she hears the doorbell ring, and she wakes up. And heaven save me. She says, "Heaven save me from mothers and birthdays." Actually, I don't remember this part of the movie. I wonder if they added it in, but basically your mother comes to visit her, and she's not too happy because it's early in the morning. And what happens? So she says she turns 28. She doesn't need to be treated like a child. And she's like, "Oh, you had that dream again, didn't you?" And then she says she has to be at the shelter by 9, so she's a psychiatrist, and she works at a shelter for youth. So this is another really, I would call it a botch, but they don't say this woman's name for a very long time, and I don't think that was by design. I think they just didn't think to say her name. One character kind of says it. Her name is Maggie, by the way. So Maggie shows up at the shelter, and someone is this guy here. This is one of the youth in the shelter. His name is Spencer, and his dad is kind of just yelling at him for whatever reason, and he's all down and stuff. And he says to Maggie, "Nice job on my kid. I expect to see some improvement." So he's being sarcastic about the nice job part, obviously. And she says, "He isn't a Toyota, and this isn't a body shop." And okay. And then so Maggie's like, "Are you okay?" to Spencer, and he's like, "Yeah, he just came by to set new rules like no running away and no setting his cars on fire." And so basically it's just like there's other ways to get his attention, so he's obviously trying to get attention from his father. That's why he does those things, complaining a little bit more about his dad here. And she says, "Someday you'll have to face your father." That's a foreshadowing. Spoiler alert, that's a foreshadowing. And then, this is another guy that works there, and he says, "Look what I found in Spencer's room." And he has a stick of dynamite. Wow. So yeah, they confiscate a lot of weapons and stuff from the kids, and they store it in the basement. And then we hear this other youth, and she says, "Take your hands off me," to these guards. And Maggie says, "What's the problem?" And she was beating on one of the other youths, and she's like, "Yeah, he was hitting on me." And Maggie says she doesn't like to be touched, so that's kind of her thing. She gets really uneasy about people touching her, even if it's innocent. And she says, "We have a session today, yes?" And she says, I've got got Doc today. Go talk to him. So Doc is another, I guess, psychiatrist at this youth shelter. So this is, I guess we'll call him Doc. I don't even know if they say his name in this, but this is the other doctor that they were talking about. And she's like, you know, what's up with, also this girl, this blonde girl is Tracy. And Maggie's asking about Tracy, and he's like, I thought we were making progress with her. And the doctor says, I get 23 minutes a week with these kids. That's, you know, not enough time to really make much progress at all. And he's saying how Tracy has issues with her father. Conventional therapy's not going to help. So this doctor believes in dream therapy and the power of dreams and all that stuff. And he has these, I guess, dream masks and stuff on his wall. I don't know how women get anything done with long nails. Anyway, so the doc is explaining how he can reach kids through their dreams. That's where they hide like their worst fears and stuff like that. And he's like, I might even be able to help you with your problem. And she's like, I don't have a problem. And then she asks him, she sees these 3D glasses on his desk, and she's like, what are these for? I'll tell Bill at the drive-in theater. Kind of a joke there, but. And he says, the 3D glasses and x-ray specs are just a different way to look at stuff. These kids have seen their problems before. These kids have to see their problems before they can face them. So that information comes in handy later on. So she puts on the glasses and she's looking at this, I guess, 3D painting. And she's like, what is it? And he explains how these ugly suckers, as he calls it, are dream demons. They're trying to wipe out the line between dreams and reality, turning the real world into one big nightmare. Again, this all comes in to play later on. Sorry about the awkwardness and turning pages. Okay. So then, what happens here? Yeah, so he says the dream demons roam the dreams of the living until they find the most twisted, evil human imaginable. So you can kind of go, you see where this is going, obviously. He's talking about Freddy, but he doesn't know who Freddy is yet. So, Tracy comes in and says, the cops dropped off John Doe this morning. So John Doe just being a general name for someone they can't identify. And it's like they need, he's just come through orientation and they need a report ASAP. She says, I'll be right there. So Megs, she calls her Megs here, which is short for Maggie, but that's the first time anyone says her name in the comic. It's just like the first time you say her name and you just say a nickname, like, I don't know. Seems like poor writing to me. So then, and then it shows Tracy in the gym, in the shelter, and she's punching the punching bag. And this guy's name is Carlos, and he's holding the bag for her. And, let's see, he calls her an underdog, and she doesn't like that, and takes a swipe at him, but he dodges it. And he says, you wouldn't hit a guy with a handicap, would you? So, Carlos, he's referring to the fact that he has a hearing aid. And Tracy says, you call that a handicap? I call it a yellow way out. parents have a plan to escape and go to California because they're basically tired of being in there. And let's see, they're just discussing that. Okay. And then the doc comes and he needs to talk to Tracy. He says, I heard you had a little bit of trouble today. And asks if she wants to talk about it, and she's like, nope. So here's the guy from the beginning, John, aka John Doe. Like I said, doesn't remember where he is. And Maggie asks him how long he's been awake, and he says, 3 days as far as I can remember. And she says, it looks more like 3 weeks. And he says, yeah, well, that's the wonder of amnesia. And she asks him, where'd you come from? And he says, I don't know, I don't remember, but wherever I'm from, I just know that I'm the last. She says, last what? And he says, survivor. So then he, let's see. And then she's like, why don't you want to, why are you avoiding sleep? And he says, because if I sleep, I'm not waking up. And she says, what makes you think that? And it's like, I don't know, I just feel it. And then she's like, don't worry, you can sleep, but there's not going to be any problems. Don't worry, you can trust me. And he's like, well, if I dream, you can't protect me. And she's like, sure I can. So she asked that he be transferred to Mercy Hospital in the morning. There we go. That wasn't too bad. So then, so we see Tracy again in the gym sparring with the doctor, and they're just talking about dreams and stuff. And he says, I told you it helps with concentration. Concentration helps meditation, and meditation helps you. So basically, he's teaching her a way to, go in and out of her dreams at will, something like that. And also how she can go into other people's dreams. I think this guy needs a psychiatrist, if you please, all that stuff. And let's see. And then, so this guy falls asleep, John falls asleep, and then the light on top of his head just blows up. And then Tracy grabs the doc and throws him to the ground. And then John wakes up, I guess, and hears laughter. I guess that's Freddy laughing. Who else would it be, right? That's a cool Freddy picture. Really cool Freddy picture. I like my glove better. So then, let's see, what's going on here? Oh yeah, so it's at night, and John is singing 99 bottles of beer on the wall, but he starts at like 4,567, and this is annoying the other youth, so he stops singing. So this is what confused, or what could be confusing if you didn't see the movie. So Maggie is looking at this article. This was the article that John had in her pocket, but they don't explain that in this comic at all. You have no idea that John had this. But the article is from the Springwood Gazette, September 7th, 1967, and it says, Krueger woman still missing. And she notices the water tower in the article. It's the same one that she sees in her dream. So she ends up getting sleepy and falls asleep, and John falls asleep too. So in Maggie's dream, she sees that woman, the Krueger woman, and And she says, I won't tell. And there's the water tower. And the girl again laughing. And then the woman screams. And then Maggie wakes up. And then John sees something spilling from the ceiling like blood. And he gets up and he sees that same little girl in his dream. And it was the same girl that was on the plane. And she's like, I told you he'd make you help him. And he says, help who? Tell me. So now he's in this creepy house. I guess it's the Freddy house. And she says, I won't tell. So then he starts walking up the steps. But in reality, he's sleepwalking. And he's just walking up nothing. He's walking up air. And then he sees the girl outside of this room. And in the real world, the guard sees him sleepwalking. He's like, what the? Come on, page, turn, page. I gotcha. Yeah, I gotcha. Okay. There we go. So then he walks into the room and he sees someone. He's in one of those rooms where like a padded room. He sees a guy in a straitjacket in the corner and he goes to talk to him. And the guy turns around and it's him. And he says, free me, you idiot. I'm your dead memory. So in the real world, John lunges at the security guard and knocks him out the window. But he didn't know what he was doing there. So luckily it was like on the main floor, so he didn't like die or nothing. But he just calls him an a-hole. So then we see, I guess the next day or whatever, and Maggie's talking to John, and they start talking about what they were dreaming about, and he says, well, he dreamed about that little girl, and she says, what did the girl look like? And he says, dark hair, pigtails, and so she realizes he's describing the same girl that's in her dreams. And the doc says there seems to be some connection between the two dreams, but Maggie doesn't believe it. And then, let's see. So, Maggie wants to spark his memory by going back to Springwood. And John's a little worried about that, but she's like, don't worry, I'll be with you. And then, so, this guy, so other staff members like, hey, have you seen Spencer, Carlos, and Tracy? And Maggie says, not since last night. So they're missing. So anyways, they go into the van and they're driving to Springwood. And John says they never found that woman, referring to the Krueger woman. Her name's Loretta Krueger. It's Freddy Krueger's wife when he was alive. And she says, no, I don't think they ever found him. So they're driving towards Springwood, and Freddy opens his eyes and says, good work, boy. You brought home the bacon. Oh, and a few appetizers as well. So what's he talking about, appetizers? John nods off, and he's like, I told you not to, because he wakes up, and he's like, I told you not to let me fall asleep. And he says, look out. And he says, he sees that little girl on the road from his dreams, and she says, go back. And she's like, John, stop it, wake up. And then the van spins out, and then they see that those other youths are in the back. They're sneaking out with the van. So they get out of the van, and then they notice that they're at this fair. And Spencer says, says, "Hey, what the hell is this place?" And the sign says Springwood Fair. And then Carlos says, "Four troubled teenagers and their counselor have just stepped off the map of known reality. Their next stop, the Twilight Zone." So that's the end of the first issue. A bit of a slow issue, but the other ones pick up a little bit. Okay, now this is the second issue of Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. So, we're back at the, where we left off at the Springfield Fair. And then, she wants the kids to, or the three teenagers that snuck there, to get back in the van and drive to the shelter, and then tell them to send the car back to pick them up or something like that. And then, let's see. So, John notices that there's no kids at the fair, and he thinks that's weird. And it looks like everyone, all the adults at the fair, are scared of John. And the title is The Final Nightmare Part 2, Dead Kids on the Block. The reference to a boy band at the time called New Kids on the Block. So that's where things get kind of weird. So they tried to phone the shelter, the three teenagers, but the phone is dead. And then they see this lady. This lady was actually played by Roseanne Barr in the movie, and her husband, Tom Arnold. So she's like, "Oh, what lovely children." Like, she's really attached to them. And she's like, "It's so nice to have kids back here. It's been so long." And she says, "But this time will be different. My adorable little babies, this time I'll hide you and he won't find you." And her husband's like, "Ethel." And so she wants to bring the children home, and she's like, "They'll bring him referring to Freddy." But they don't know what these two people are talking about, so they leave. So now, there's a bell ringing, I guess, and everyone starts to leave, it looks like. And then the Tom Arnold guy sees John and he says, "You said you was getting out, but you brought back more." So he seems to know who John is. And then, so Maggie tells the three teenagers to get back to the shelter while her and John stay there. So Maggie notices that the bell came from the school, so she decides to go investigate, but she notices the water tower that's in her dreams. And then they notice that there's a big chalk drawing of Freddy on the floor, and it says, "1, 2, Freddy's coming for you." So Maggie's like, "Have you seen this before?" And he says, "I don't know, but I know that's Freddy Krueger." And she says, "That thing's not even human." And then, let's see, this lady tries to scrub it off the floor, but she says it won't wash away, not even when it rains. So they go to the Springwood High School, and they see on the door, it says, 3, 4, better lock your door. So they go into one of the classrooms, and they see professor at the chalkboard, and he's doing a lesson, but it seems to be all gibberish on the chalkboard. And then let's see. Maggie says, "Don't disturb him." He just keeps on teaching, and on this chart here it says 5-6. Grab your crucifix. So then she's looking through one of these books, and she sees an article that fits the ripped out article that John was carrying. So we know that that's where John got it from, and that's where he's from. And the professor says, to find the entire history, you'll need to know. To find out the entire history, you'll need to know. Welcome to Freddy 101. So yeah, there's another thing that they didn't really present well in the comic. So these three teenagers are in the van, and they're trying to drive back to the shelter, but they keep basically driving in circles, and they keep showing up back at this statue. And they're like, what? We're back here again? How are we driving in circles? So obviously Freddy's messing with them somehow. So Tracy decides to get out, and she starts walking. And then, let's see. She's walking down the street, and it happens to be Elm Street. And she says, I think this is my kind of neighborhood, empty. And like every house on the block is for sale, for sale, for sale, for sale, for sale. So then they go into this house, abandoned house, and then suddenly it kind of like explodes, and not explodes, but all this fire comes out, and it sort of becomes, looks like Nancy's house from part 1. So they start looking around, and Carlos finds a bed upstairs, and he goes to sleep because he's tired, obviously. And let's see. So then Tracy starts looking for Carlos. Hope that's not too bright. Maybe I used too much light. Anyways, it is what it is. So then the professor's like, in 1493, Freddy sailed across the sea. That's kind of funny. And then they keep searching, and they see this is kind of creepy. It says in memoriam. So it's all the teenagers that were killed, I guess, by Freddy. It's a lot of students. And Maggie says the dates, they're all within the last 10 years or so. What the hell happened here? And John says Freddy happened here. But how does he know that? He has amnesia. I guess he remembers certain things. Anyways, and Maggie says that's impossible. He was dead by the time these started. And then, let's see. It says, here's where so he's going, the professor's going over a timeline about Freddy. And then he says, here's where they took his child away. And John says, what child? Taking his child to put into the town orphanage added a critical variable to the already unstable status quo. So basically, Freddy had a kid, and he was taken to the orphanage. Whoops. I bent that page a little bit. My bad. So then, he hears Carlos hears someone calling him. He gets up. He thinks it's Tracy, but it isn't. It's his mother. Well, he's dreaming, obviously, and it's Freddy posing as his mother, and she smacks him really hard against the side of the head. And I think that's how he originally got deaf in that ear. His mom smacked. Oh no, what happened was, yeah, his mom got mad at him and shoved the Q-tip in his ear as punishment. Yeah, it's kind of gross. So I take that to mean that maybe that's how he got deaf in the first place. He's kind of reliving it. So then Freddy appears and cuts off his ear. So now he can't hear. And then, he says, "Giving me my hearing back." So then Freddy puts this thing on his ear, which is basically a super strong hearing aid. So Freddy goes, "Shh," and then he drops a pin, and it makes, John doesn't want to, or Carlos doesn't want it to land because it'll make a really loud noise because his hearing aid's super strong. So he catches it, but then Freddy drops like, hundreds of pins, and they'll land on the floor, and they make a loud noise, and he says, "Make it stop." And then Freddy gets a chalkboard, and then starts scratching it, and he starts expanding, I guess you can say, and then his whole head just blows up in a gory mess. And then Tracy goes in his room and sees something, or sees his hearing aid, and Carlos is nowhere to be found, and it looks like Carlos's soul goes into Freddy's body, and he says, "Here today, gone tomorrow." So I think that was Freddy's first victim in this series. Not too much of a body count if that's what you're looking for. So now here's Spencer. He falls asleep and he sees Carlos in his TV. And he's like, "Oh, that's weird." And then, but he wasn't even asleep yet, so that is kind of weird. And then he falls asleep, and then he sees a commercial. This is your, this is your brain. This is your brain on drugs, and they crack the egg in the frying pan. Which it's funny because in the movie, this part is played by Johnny Depp, who was Glenn in the very first Freddy Nightmare on Elm Street movie. So then Freddy hits him with a frying pan, and he's like, "It looks like a frying pan and some eggs to me." And then all these weird effects start happening on the screen, and they start, reaching out of the screen. It's a pretty cool effect in the movie, I remember. And then we see that Freddy is playing a video game, and he says, "Game time." So yeah, they go to the orphanage, and long story short, they find out that Freddy. So basically, John starts to think that maybe he's Freddy's kid, but then they find out that Freddy actually had a daughter, not a son. So then Tracy shows up, and he's like, "I can't find Carlos. Yeah, all I can find is his hearing aid." So then she brings them, I guess, to the house. I have to speed it up a little bit if I want to get through this. So now Spencer's gone as well, and then so they split up the house and look for him, and then Maggie goes in the basement and finds a secret entrance in the wall, like a secret passage, and she finds, I guess this was Freddy's house. So she sees all Freddy's gloves that he used to kill kids in real life. Not real life, but real life in the comic, not in the dream world. And he has all article clippings of the murders that he did. And then she goes out the back entrance and she sees the water tower, and she realizes this is, Water Dream that takes place. And then, so we cut to Freddy, and he says, "Now I'm playing with power," which is a reference to the Nintendo slogan. And he sees that he's playing this game where he's controlling Spencer. And then, in the game, Spencer's dad shows up and says, "Be a man, be a man, be a man, be a man. Be like me, be like me, be like me." attacks Spencer with the tennis racket. Spencer gets an apple, gets some powers. And then Spencer is, he shoots his dad, or the video game version of his dad. And Freddy says, "Great graphics." I remember that in the movie too. But then suddenly Spencer flies through the wall in reality, and John says, "I found Spencer." But in the game, he's still asleep, and Freddy's still stomping on him. And then they're trying to wake him up, but they can't get him up. And you see, he just gets up on his own. He's kind of like sleepwalking, I guess. And starts like punching the wall. And John says, "I have to go into the dream and try to get him out." He's like, he gets this piece of, I don't know what it is, some wood thing. And he tells Tracy to hit him over the head so that he'll pass out and go into the dream world. But she doesn't want to do it. She's like, "I have an easier way through meditation." He's like, "There's no time." So he slaps her, and she's like, "Don't hit me." And she whacks him on the head with that wood thing. So there's John. He's in the dream world. Freddy's still beating up Spencer. And then Tracy also appears in the dream world, and she's like, "I told you there was an easier way." So they find Freddy controlling Spencer, playing the game. And now Freddy has his version of the Power Glove, and he punches Spencer, and the TV blows up. And in reality, Spencer falls through the floor, and you see his soul, I guess, leaving. And in the dream world, Freddy absorbs his soul and says, "Oh yeah, it's good to be back in business. Thanks to you." So then, what happens? Oh yeah, so it looks like Tracy tries, well, it does kick him between the legs. But then she wakes up, and they see that John is still passed out. So they decide to get that guy out of there. So they get him into the van and drive away. And John wakes up again in that house. And then the house catches on fire. He jumps out the window. So obviously he's in a dream. And of course he's falling again. But he has a parachute. But in reality, his body gets pulled up out of the roof of the van. And then he sees Freddy in the air, and he says, "I know who I am." And he says, "Really?" So he says, "I'm your son." So actually, yeah, I got it wrong before. They didn't learn that Freddy had a daughter versus a son at the school. This is where you learn it, because he tells Freddy, "I'm your son," and he's like, "You're not my son. I didn't have a son, I had a daughter," basically. So Freddy cuts his cords, and he falls. And Freddy drags out these spikes, and poor John, lands right on the spikes. And then you see John with, in reality, he has all these wounds where the spikes in the dream hit the wounds. And he disappears into a soul or something like that. And Freddy absorbs his soul. Oh, but on the previous page he says, right here he says, "I was wrong. It's not a boy." So now they end up leaving, and Freddy says, oh yeah, so they drive through that barrier I was talking about that goes out of Springwood. And then Freddy says, "It's traveling time." And his soul, or whatever you want to call that, his essence, goes into Maggie. Alright, erase them from history, I guess. So the title is The Final Nightmare Part 3, and memories like the killings in my mind. I guess that's what the title is. So she goes, Maggie goes home. She wants to talk to her mother, and she finds adoption papers and learns that she was adopted. And she wants to know who her real parents are. But her mom's like, oh, we can't, we're not allowed to, they're not allowed to, we're not allowed to tell you who the original parents are. And then, let's see, Maggie's having another dream. So that's Freddy when he was a human, played by Robert Englund, kind of looks like him. And that's his wife and child. And the wife comes out of the basement, and she's like, I won't tell. And he says, we need to talk. And she's like, Fred, please, I won't tell. So the daughter goes inside, and she goes in the basement, and she sees the secret room. So I guess the mom found the secret room with all his murder weapons and stuff, and the daughter sees it, and then she hears a noise. And then she sort of assumes her adult body, and she sees Freddy. And I guess they don't show it here, but Freddy actually kills the mother. You see it in the movie, he chokes her or something, and she sees it. But Freddy's like, you were such a little artist. And she's like, no, it can't be. I know who I am. He's like, you can't be my father. And let's see, Freddy's like, it's time to start over again. And she says, there's the shelter. And she's like, no, the shelter, but this is in Springwood. And Freddy says, every town has an Elm Street. You see the Elm Street sign come up out of the ground. So because he was able to, I guess, possess her, or whatever you want to call it, he was able to, escape Springwood and spread his terror anywhere he wants now. So Maggie wakes up and realizes that Tracy is in trouble, and now Tracy is in a dream, and she dreams about her abusive father, but this time she's not taking any crap, and she starts to beat him up. But then, of course, the abusive father becomes Freddy, so she starts to attack Freddy, and then he says a funny line, Kung Fu this B word. And what happens here, it looks like he tried to slice her, but he misses her. I think she wakes up. Oh no, she burns her hand on the fire, and that wakes her up, I think. Yeah, she wakes up with her hand throbbing, and then what happens? Oh yeah, so now we're in the dog's dream, and he has a bat, and then he starts to beat the crap out of Freddy. And I always remember this part. He's like, let's see, they tried burning me, and he cuts his finger off. They tried burying me, and he cuts another finger off. And here's my favorite, they even tried holy water, and he cuts another finger off. And he says, but I keep on ticking. And his fingers regenerate. He says, that's what they promised to me. And the dog's like, who's they? And Freddy says, the dream people, the ones who gave me this job. So he's talking about those dream demons that the doctor was talking about before. And then the dog grabs part of Freddy's shirt, and then he wakes up because his alarm clock went off. Beep, 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 beep. And then, yeah, he wakes up and realizes he has that part of Freddy's shirt in reality. So he realizes he can pull things out of dreams. Kind of like Nancy. Nancy in the first one. So then they have this plan to pull Freddy out of the dream. So Maggie volunteers to go under, and so the doctor gives her the 3D glasses and says it represents, what is it? He's going to try to trick you like he did Tracy. Use these to see behind his crap. And just like, get out of here. And he says, in the dream world, they can represent anything you want. So, I don't know, it's just some gimmick to put on the 3D glasses, because in the actual movie, the last, I don't know, 20 minutes or whatever is actually 3D. And same with this comic. So she falls asleep and then puts on the glasses. Now, the rest of the comic is in 3D, so that's why it looks all weird. And I have to admit, with the 3D glasses on, this actually looks pretty cool. So she goes into this weird doorway with these, looks like the dream demons. That's just an ad. Skip that. And then, yeah, let's see, she's in this. Oh, yeah, so she's kind of reliving. She goes into Freddy's brain or something, and she's reliving some moments from his past. So here's Freddy as a kid, and he's smashing a mouse with a mallet. And then he's at school, and all the students are like, son of 100 maniacs. They just keep taunting him over and over again. And then it shows Freddy as a teenager, and he's cutting his own stomach with a knife. And his dad comes down, and it's like, time for your daily beating. And the dad was actually played by Alice Cooper, which it does look like him here too. So his dad hits him with the belt, and Freddy's like, thank you, sir, may I have another? And then he ends up killing his own father with a blade, stabbing him right in the eye. And then it's the memory of Freddy when he was alive, just before, like, this is when the parents got together and decided to burn him for killing all those kids. And then the dream demons approach him, and they basically make a deal. And then we have, oh yeah, this is the part that I was talking about before. So she sees the girl, and she's watching Freddy kill the mother, and she says that she won't tell. And Freddy says, but you did tell, didn't you? So yeah, it's obvious now that she is Freddy's daughter. So then she grabs a pipe and starts start fighting. She hits Freddy with the pipe and grabs Freddy, and then she says, now get me out of here. So she starts waking up and pulling Freddy into the real world. And then, yeah, she wakes up, but Freddy's not there, and it's still in 3D, even though she's awake. They explain that somehow, but anyways, it's not really important. So they go downstairs, and they go into the room where there's all these weapons that they confiscated from the kids. Or did that happen already? Yeah, they should have done that before. That makes no sense why they would wait till now, but... So she goes in the base, or somewhere in the facility anyways, and she sees Freddy. And he's apologizing for what he did, but it's just a trick. And then he says, come to daddy, but she's not buying it, so she hits him in the stomach area with this bat with spikes on it. And it looks like it knocks off Freddy's glove. throws a bunch of knives and stuff at Freddy, pinning his arms and legs to the wall. And she uses ninja stars and everything. And shoves a crowbar right in his stomach. And she puts on Freddy's glove. And Freddy's like, feels good, doesn't it? Come on, let your daddy show you how to use it. And she says, like father, like daughter, and stabs him in the stomach with the glove. And then they find that stick of dynamite, and they light the fuse, throw it to Maggie, and she says, Happy Father's Day, and kisses Freddy, and then shoves the dynamite right in his stomach. I don't even know if you can see this at all, but Freddy says, kids, and then there's a big explosion, and you see Freddy's face go flying. It's a pretty cool 3D effect, actually. So then, what happens? Alright, yeah, whatever, they're celebrating, and it says Freddy's dead. And at the bottom it says, be sure to read more about Freddy's previous adventures in the all-new monthly Nightmares on Elm Street comic. Okay, that sums up the Freddy's Dead comics. You know what? Honestly, I can't recommend these issues. They're not that great. The artwork is okay, I guess. The story, it's really hard to follow if you haven't seen the movie. You know, they're trying to cram an hour and a half or 2 hour movie into 3 comics. It just doesn't work. But they did a particularly poor job, in my opinion. Maybe the only thing worth seeing is the 3D effect. It's kind of cool in the last issue, but honestly, I don't recommend this at all. But nonetheless, I hope this was an enjoyable video, and I hope you found it relaxing. Sorry if it sounds like I'm rushing, but I'm kind of running out of space on my memory card, so